My name is Nora Callahan. I was 34 years old, and I worked as a title examiner for a small real estate firm in Harwick, Ohio. The kind of job where you spend your days tracing the legal history of other people's property, making sure the chain of ownership is clean and unbroken before anyone signs anything. I knew land records the way some people know scripture. I knew what a deed meant, what a lien meant, what it meant when a name did or did not appear on a document. That knowledge lived in my hands as much as my head. I could read a title abstract the way a mechanic reads an engine. It was quiet work. Precise work. I liked it. I kept a copy of one deed in the breast pocket of my work jacket. The county recorder's stamped original from a closing I'd handled personally, the paper worn soft at one fold from being opened and set flat more times than I could count. I carried it out of habit, the way you carry something that reminds you what the work is actually for. I was at my desk on a Thursday morning when my phone buzzed. It was 11:14 a.m. The office was slow. I had a cup of coffee going cold beside my keyboard and a closing disclosure packet open in front of me, the laminated edge starting to peel at one corner the way they always did. I had been pressing it flat with my thumb without thinking about it. The text was from my mother. "You're not coming on the cruise, sweetheart. Dad wants it to be just family this time. You understand." I read it twice. Then I set the phone face down on the desk, picked up my coffee, and found it was too cold to drink. My parents, Diane and Glenn Callahan, had lived in Harwick their whole lives in the same neighborhood they'd raised me in, a grid of flat streets and mature oaks off the south end of town. My father was retired from a sheet metal fabrication plant. My mother had done bookkeeping part-time for most of my childhood and stopped entirely when Glenn's pension came in. They were not extravagant people. They had opinions about what family meant and who owed what to whom, and those opinions had been forming for longer than I had been alive. I was their only child. This fact was never stated as a pressure. It didn't need to be. The house on Dunmore Circle had been my mother's idea first, not as a request but as a comment the way her ideas always arrived. She mentioned, twice in 1 month, that the house 2 doors down from theirs had sold, and wasn't it a shame that the neighborhood was going to people who didn't know it, and didn't I think it would be something if family could stay close? I heard what she was saying. I had always been good at hearing what she was saying. I found 4 Dunmore Circle 6 weeks later. A 1960s split level that needed work, new roof, kitchen gutted, 1 bathroom remodeled from the subfloor up. I ran the numbers. I looked at comps. I made an offer. The purchase price came to $847,200, and I paid $14,380 in closing costs out of pocket because the sellers wouldn't move on them and I wanted the deal done. I wrote both checks myself. The deed came back with my name on it, singular, the way I had filled out the paperwork. My parents moved in 8 months later, after the renovation was finished. The cruise was different, or I had told myself it was. It was their 40th anniversary, and when my mother floated the idea of a Caribbean trip, I said I would handle it, the same way I had handled most things. I booked a 7-night sailing out of Galveston, the 3 of us, a balcony cabin, excursions included. The total came to $6,750. I put it on my card in February. We were supposed to leave in 6 weeks. I had not yet packed a bag. What I gave my parents over the years was not one large thing. It was the accumulation of ordinary things, which is harder to account for and harder to explain to anyone who hasn't done it. There were years when I covered their car insurance after Glenn's rates climbed following a fender incident he didn't mention to me until the cancellation notice arrived. There were the property taxes on the house, which remained in my name, that I paid every spring without discussion because we had never had a discussion about it. There were the appliance replacements, the HVAC service call when the unit failed in August, the new gutters that the contractor said couldn't wait another winter. I hired the contractor. I scheduled the work. I drove to Harwick on a Saturday to be there when they came because my parents did not like dealing with tradespeople and I did not think it was worth arguing about. I brought groceries when I visited. I handled my father's Medicare supplement paperwork 2 years running because the forms confused him, and my mother's solution to confusion was to leave things on the counter until someone else dealt with them. I took time off work to drive my father to a cardiology appointment in Columbus when the Harwick clinic had a 6-week wait. We stopped at a Bob Evans on the way back because he wanted the pot roast. I ate eggs and listened to him talk about a fishing trip he'd taken in 1987. None of this was ledgered. I didn't think of it that way. I thought of it as what you did. What I gave up to do it was harder to see while it was happening. A relationship that ended partly because I was never available on weekends, partly because the man I was with got tired of coming second to obligations I couldn't explain in a way that satisfied him. Savings that grew slowly, slower than they should have for someone my age at my salary because there was always something. Vacations I planned and canceled. A graduate certificate program I enrolled in and deferred twice and eventually let lapse. I had a reason for all of it that I had never said out loud because I hadn't needed to. The house was mine. The investment was mine. What I was building was a future that included my parents and also included a claim. Not a financial one, nothing that formal, but a claim on the understanding that I was someone who showed up, and that being someone who showed up meant something in this family. I had believed that for a long time. I was still believing it on the morning the text arrived. I left the phone face down for 11 minutes. Then I turned it over and called my mother. She answered on the second ring. "Nora, hi, sweetheart," she said. "Did you get my text?" "I did," I said. "Good. I didn't want you to find out some other way." "Mom," I said. "I booked the cruise. I paid for the cabin. All three of us." "I know you did, and that was very generous," she said. "But your father and I have been talking. And we feel like for our anniversary we want it to be the two of us. Just a couple's trip. You understand?" Something settled low in my sternum. Not anger, not disbelief. Something more like a door closing very slowly on a room I had thought was mine. "The cabin is in my name," I said. "I'm not sure how you transfer a booking like that." "Oh, I'm sure there's a way," she said. "You know how to handle those things." "Mom, you're asking me to give you a trip I paid for and not come on it." "I'm not asking," she said, and her voice stayed warm the whole time. "I'm letting you know. It's our anniversary. You don't want to be a third wheel." "I booked a balcony cabin," I said. "For 3 people. Well, you can get a refund for your portion, I'm sure. Or eat the cost. It's not that much." I didn't say anything for a moment. "Nora," she said, "don't make this difficult. We just want some time as a family." "I'm your family," I said. "You know what I mean," she said. "Married family. You'll understand when you're married." "Mom, I paid for the house you're living in." There was a pause, short, managed. "And we are grateful for that," she said. "Truly. But if you're going to bring that up every time we make a decision you don't like, that's a different conversation, isn't it? I didn't raise you to be ungrateful, and I'd appreciate it if you didn't make me feel like the bad person here." The word landed the way that word always landed. Inverted, the accusation folded inside out so that the person holding it couldn't put it down without looking like they'd stolen it. "I'm not making you feel anything," I said. "You're being very cold right now," she said. "I'm not going to apologize for wanting to celebrate with my husband." "I'm not asking you to apologize," I said. "Good," she said. "Then we're settled. I'll text you the excursion schedule. Maybe you can just handle the rebooking since you know those systems." She said goodbye in the same tone she'd used for the whole call, even and warm, and the line went quiet. My father called 4 hours later. He was shorter about it. "Your mom told me you gave her a hard time," he said. "I asked her a question," I said. "She's upset," he said. "It's our anniversary." "I know," I said. "You'll be fine," he said. "You always land on your feet." The line went quiet again. I sat with the phone in my hand until the screen went dark. The next morning I drove to Crestfield Savings and Loan on the east side of Harwick. I parked in the lot. I walked in through the glass door and sat down across from a loan officer I'd worked with twice before on title searches. I asked her one question: whether a homeowner could list and close on a property within 30 days if the title was clean and they had a cash buyer lined up. She said yes. I thanked her and left. I sat in my car for a few minutes with both hands on the wheel, looking at the front of the bank. The sun was flat and white on the windows. A man walked out carrying a folded paper bag. I watched him get into a truck and pull away, and then I started my own car and drove back to the office. I called my attorney from the parking garage. The deed to 4 Dunmore Circle had never left my name. This was not a trick. It was the original paperwork, filed at closing, never amended. My parents had moved in as occupants. There had been no lease, no transfer, no formal arrangement of any kind, because that was how my family operated, on assumption and warmth and the unstated understanding that everything would work out because I would make it work out. I told my attorney what I needed. She pulled the record, confirmed the title was clean, and asked me how quickly I wanted to move. I told her before the ship came back into port. She didn't ask me to explain. The listing went up 4 days after the text. I priced it at market. A clean split level in a tight neighborhood, freshly renovated, no deferred maintenance. I had looked at every comp in that zip code before I set the number, the same way I would have for any other client, methodical and without sentiment. My attorney handled the disclosures. My contact at the county recorder's office confirmed the filing turnaround. I had done enough closings to know exactly what a clean transaction looked like, and I built this one to move. I had an offer within a week. Cash buyer, no contingencies. We signed the purchase agreement on a Tuesday afternoon. The buyer's agent sent over the wire instructions that same evening. I reviewed the settlement statement line by line the way I always did, not because I expected an error, but because that was the habit, and the habit was what made the work reliable. I scheduled the closing for the following Thursday. The week before it happened, I drove to 4 Dunmore Circle on a Sunday. Not to reconsider. I stood in the driveway for a few minutes, looking at the roofline I'd paid to replace, the kitchen window I'd spec'd myself, the new gutters running straight and clean along the eaves. The maple in the front yard had put out new growth. I looked at it for a while. Then I got back in my car. I arranged for a moving service to transfer what my parents had left in the house, their furniture, their boxes, their framed photographs, into a storage unit I rented in their names. I paid the first month. I sorted through the staging checklist with the buyer's agent on the phone while the movers worked. I left a note inside the unit with the access code, written on the back of a receipt from the moving company, taped to the nearest box so they would see it immediately. My parents were somewhere in the Gulf of Mexico when the deed transferred. They came home on a Tuesday. I know this because my mother texted me a photograph of the ship at Port Whitehall against blue water, her caption reading "Made it. Beautiful trip." I did not respond. They drove to Dunmore Circle from the airport. I wasn't there. I heard about what happened next from the new owner, who called me because my number was still in the listing file as the prior contact. He was polite about it. He said he understood these things could be complicated. My parents knocked on the door of the house. A man they had never met answered. They called me from the driveway. I answered. "Nora," my mother said, and her voice was different now, the warmth stripped back to something thinner. "What did you do?" "I sold the house," I said. "You, Nora, that is our home." "It was my property," I said. "You can't just, we live there." "We live there." "You did," I said. "The new owner took possession last Thursday." There was a sound on the line that wasn't quite a word. Then, "Where are our things?" "In storage," I said. I gave her the address and the access code. "You moved our things without telling us," she said. "I rented the unit in your names," I said. "The first month is paid." My father got on the line then. "You had no right," he said. "That was a family home." "Dad," I said, "my name was on the deed." "We raised you," he said. "We gave you everything." I didn't answer. "Nora," he said, "do you understand what you've done to us?" I reached into the breast pocket of my jacket. I took out the county recorder's stamped copy of the warranty deed, the one from the original closing, folded once along a worn crease I'd made myself. I opened my phone to the recorded document portal and pulled up the digital filing, the official timestamp and recording number visible on the screen. I laid the deed flat on the desk in front of me. "You raised me," I said. "And I bought you a house. And when I asked one question about a trip I paid for, you told me I wasn't family enough to come. There was silence on the line. Everything I did, I said, you called it what was owed. The one time I asked for anything, you called me ungrateful. That's not what happened, my mother said. I'm not arguing about what happened, I said. The deed is transferred. The storage unit is paid through next month. I'll send you the address in writing. Nora. I have to go, I said. I ended the call. I folded the deed back along its crease. I put it in my pocket. That was 14 months ago. My parents found an apartment in a complex on the north end of Harwick. 2 bedrooms, ground floor, the kind of place with a covered parking space and a small patio. My mother's sister helped them with the deposit. I know this because one of my cousins mentioned it at a function I attended briefly in the spring, the way you mention weather. About 6 weeks after the sale closed, my mother sent me a card. A physical card, the kind with a watercolor flower on the front. Inside she had written that she was willing to move past this if I was, and that she hoped I understood they never meant to hurt me, and that family was family at the end of the day. I read it at my kitchen counter on a Wednesday morning, still in my coat before I'd set my bag down. I read it twice. I set it on the counter. I didn't send one back. There was a moment, standing there with the card in my hand, when I thought about the version of this I had been building for years. The one where showing up meant something, where the accumulation of ordinary things eventually added up to an ordinary understanding. I thought about it the way you think about a calculation you ran correctly and got the wrong answer anyway. The inputs were right. The method was sound. Something else was the problem. I put the proceeds from the sale into an account I had been meaning to open for 3 years. I took the graduate certificate program off deferral and finished it in the fall. I have weekends now that belong entirely to me, which sounds small and is not small. I spend some of them in the kind of quiet that used to make me anxious and now just feels like mine. What I know is this: the people who call you ungrateful for needing something back are usually the ones who've been keeping careful count of what you owe them while insisting no count exists. I keep the deed in the breast pocket of my work jacket. Not for any reason I can explain precisely. It's a copy, after all, nothing that needs safekeeping. But the paper is worn soft at the fold now, and when I reach into that pocket and feel it there, what moves through me is not pride and not relief. It is the specific weight of a thing that was always mine that I finally held. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. You never know who's pressing something flat with their thumb and waiting for it to hold.